there's a lot of development happening across Africa with infrastructure development. So new roads are made every month, and in a place like Rwanda, which was even moving at a faster pace, there will be new roads. There will be places to ways into informal settlements, and being able to rely on a tech solution to bring a driver to a specific location on a map or have the user do that was way more challenging than we anticipated. So eventually we had an idea. What if we took users at random, brought them to the office and didn't tell them what we were doing, set them up in an office with a remote camera and a list of tasks and a facilitator in the room, and just let us watch them and see what is happening. And I remember being so humbled by that experience because I realized at that moment that we were disrespecting our users because a lot of people would see the design in front of them and they were unable to complete very basic tasks. And when we would have conversations with them afterwards, they would feel embarrassed or they would feel that they weren't able to figure it out. And that is the most terrible thing you can do when you've designed a product that makes somebody feel embarrassed, because they can't figure it out. So I think that if you go out of your way to really try to observe the users, and if you can in context, you will notice that there's a lot of things in their environment that you cannot observe in a lab.
Hi, I'm Mike Green, a freelance user research lead and digital consultant based in the UK. Welcome to Understanding Users. In this podcast series, I chat with digital experts from a variety of disciplines, including user research, UX and service design, development, and product management. And there's even a founder or two. I talk to them about how they came to be in their current roles, what they've learned along the way, and the challenges they face in designing and building digital products and services with users in mind. And while many of these conversations are recorded remotely, I'm also keen to get out into the wild and meet my guests face to face where possible. So in some episodes, you'll hear me prowling the corridors of UX conferences in different parts of the globe to get the views of speakers and attendees alike. These are intended to be relaxed, informal chats with professionals who are keen to share their experiences. So sit back and enjoy. I'm delighted to announce that Understanding Users has a sponsor. Have you or your team ever struggled with getting the right types of users at the right time to speak to in your research? Have you wasted hours emailing to and fro with research participants trying to find a convenient time to speak to them? And after all that, have you found yourself speaking to the wrong type of participants for your product? Or worse, simply had participants fail to show up at all to a scheduled research session? Well, Ribbon is a continuous research platform that lets organizations do user interviews and in-product surveys in real time with customers as they use your website or apps. User researchers, product designers, and product managers all use Ribbon to quickly and effectively validate product decisions with real users, helping them build products that attract and retain more customers. Ribbon is an end-to-end research platform, helping you target participants within your product, manage research incentives, run surveys and interviews, and store and share your findings. To start running in-product user interviews or surveys today, head to ribbonapp.com to get started with a free trial. Links are in the show notes. Peter Kariuki is a software engineer and entrepreneur and was the co-founder of the startup SafeMotos, a motorcycle ride-sharing solution in Rwanda. In this episode, Peter and I talk about the context of digital design in Africa, how mobile phone coverage in Rwanda affected early design decisions within the SafeMotos app, and his belief in the positive role that exponentially growing smartphone usage across Africa can have on solving serious societal problems. Finally, he plays my 3-card challenge to share his favorite UX tool, favorite technique, and a trend he sees in the future. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoy the episode. So this time I'm speaking with Peter Kariuki, who is a software engineer and entrepreneur who's very passionate about digital innovation. And he's going to be one of the keynote speakers at the Kai 23 conference in Hamburg at the end of April in 2023. and it's great to have a chance to chat to him. So, hi, Peter. Welcome to the show, and thanks for talking to me.
Hi, Mike. It's a pleasure to be here. I look forward to our conversation.
And Peter, you were telling me just before we started that you're talking to me from Kenya. Is that right?
That's correct. I'm in a place called Watamu, which is in the south of Kenya.
Fantastic. And we'll come on in a minute to talk about the keynote, if that's okay, and kind of your what you're going to be talking about at the conference. But I guess first, it would be really interesting to hear a little bit about what you're up to at the moment, because I believe you're a founder of a ride sharing app called SafeMotos. Is that right?
Yes. So that was my previous startup. At the moment, I'm actually working on something very exciting, which I'm happy to share. But also, doing SafeMotos was mainly on ride hailing, focusing on Rwanda and the DRC as well.
Brilliant. So tell me about the kind of the genesis of that. How did you come up with the idea? How did you go about kind of creating it? How did you involve others in the kind of the process of building and designing it and launching it?
The idea of making safe motors was actually pretty organic. So I had moved into Rwanda, which is a really amazing place because it's in most of Africa, the cities are normally busy and active, and you're not supposed to go there. Whilst Rwanda was completely different. But one of the things that is pretty common across most African cities is that you get around by motorcycle taxis. This is because there isn't that effective of a public transportation network. And the most effective way to get from point to point is by motorcycle taxis. So one time, while I'm in Rwanda, I was meeting my business partner to be for a drink, and I had just come off a motorcycle, and I just talked to him. I said, I wish there was a way in which you could know the quality of the driver before you hopped onto their bike, because the way it works is you go to the street and you flag somebody down, and then you go with him. You have no idea who they are, no idea of their track record. And so it just started with that idea that, what if we could, know the quality of the driver before you got onto the ride. And, kind of from that spark, there was a lot of ideas of, let's put sensors in the helmets, let's track them by a satellite. And eventually we settled on a smartphone, because a smartphone has a lot of the sensors that you require, that you need to measure the driving behavior. So that was the idea of how SafeMotos got started. It was just, by accident, pretty organically.
Right. That's fascinating. And is it a payment system as well, or is it primarily for, as you say, measuring the kind of quality of the driver?
Yes. So at the beginning, when we made SafeMotos, it was mostly about ride hailing. So being able to request a ride and having some confidence on who the driver was. Later on, as we grew the product, we realized that in order to make the experience seamless for both the rider and the driver, we needed to work on payment solutions. And that led us into developing a wallet from which users could top up their money. And that kind of grew into a product that was used for settlements between drivers, settlements between companies and their employees as well. And yeah, so because of the nature of the transactions, they're frequent, um, and a lot of them are happening. So we just had to make payments to be a part of the solution.
Right. And you talked just then about the experience of the person hailing and the driver as well. I'm interested to know, with a user experience hat on, how did you go about kind of developing, taking it from an idea through to a working product? I'm thinking in terms of things like user research, understanding the needs of the users, and improving the offering based on what you were learning. Just talk me through that.
Yeah, so once we had an idea, we had to go ahead and think about how to make the products. And one of the things we did pretty early on was, of course, to interview our colleagues. So this was something that everybody does, and we were just trying to find out what their experiences were with the ride hailing and the experiences with other technology systems. And really, the goal was to try to empathize with what people were going through. And one of the things that really came out of that meeting that really surprised me was that kind of going into this, we did know that motorcycles, taxis, on top of them being very popular, they're also very dangerous. And this is, as I came to find out, one of the most common reasons for going to an emergency room. And while speaking to potential users and doing research, one of the things that really stood out was that everybody seems to know somebody who had been in an accident or was robbed or was in a bad situation. And that was really shocking because it seemed like this was a really prevalent problem. And that's it. That led us to re-emphasize the message on we need to ensure that drivers are safe. And this is just not coming from the user's perspective. Speaking to the drivers and trying to understand how they were going about their day, I was shocked by some of the things we found out, such as extremely long hours, you know, long times in between rides where you are, sitting idle. And so there was a lot of issues I identified. And I guess one last thing was early on was also kind of respecting that these kinds of solutions were pretty early, and a lot of our users were not used to the idea of hailing a ride or reading a map. And that was some of the insights that we had. And for us, it was an inspiration to think about how we could design the system to really fit our user base.
Right. So the users are essentially the riders of the motorbikes themselves, and the passengers, essentially those hailing the motorbikes. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. So it's a two-sided market, and eventually became a multiple sides. But at the core of it is, of course, you need the service providers who are the drivers, and then the customers, and then you have to there's a lot of things you have to think about how do you make sure that every time a user wants to get a ride, they can get one, and how do you keep the drivers happy so that they keep using the technology and it doesn't slip their mind or fall down their priority list.
That yeah, what a fascinating a challenge. And thinking about location specific, I suppose, issues. Well, I'm interested to know, compared to developing such an app. I mean, Uber is the obvious example in Northern Europe and North America. What would you say that the challenges were for you in terms of the African context that made that were particular to what you were working on in that area, that part of the world?
At the core of a ride hailing solution is routing and mapping. And that was one of the biggest challenges that we faced. The fact that a lot of maps were not up to date and were not in context to how people use the road. So, for example, there's a lot of development happening across Africa with infrastructure development. So new roads are made every month, and in a place like Rwanda, which was even moving at a faster pace, there will be new roads. There will be places to ways into informal settlements, and being able to rely on a tech solution to bring a driver to a specific location on a map or have the user do that was way more challenging than we anticipated. And this kind of goes all the way into the experience of both parties, because if, for example, a driver was matched with a customer and the estimated time of arrival was was estimated to be too short, it was too optimistic. That means the driver spent so much time getting to the customer, and the customer also waited a long time, and that increases the inefficiencies of the whole system. On top of that is the very simple idea was that somebody could drop a pin into a place and we could navigate a driver or service to where they are. But that turned out to be more challenging in a place. We're going to dwell on Rwanda, but it's very hilly. So you can have a road that is 10 meters away in terms of as a crow flies, but it's going to be 15 minutes to go around. So if the GPS window or the specificity of the directions just missed by a little bit, then you're adding extreme wait times. So there was these kinds of challenges based on the fact that a lot of map and mapping data was not up to date, and as well as just challenges in developing a real-time solution that requires a certain degree of accuracy of navigation.
Right. And what about mobile phone coverage? Is it in terms of kind of the areas you were mapping, was coverage generally pretty good?
So at the beginning, I will never forget this. We were at a pitch meeting in London, and everybody asked us, "Is there anybody with a smartphone over there?" And whereas at that time, smartphones were starting to become ubiquitous, and there was $100 smartphones that were pretty decent, and so that was changing. And that at the beginning, that was very exciting to have a lot of people on smartphones. To your question, the next challenge was, of course, coverage and data. And you can have data coverage, but is it consistent? Is it efficient? So we had a lot of issues where a driver will be en route, and then the data connectivity would cut out, and then unable to get to where they were supposed to. On top of that, a lot of how people use mobile internet in Africa is prepaid bundles, where you will purchase a bundle ahead of time to give you a certain amount of megabytes, and it's can be and was a headache in how you can top up, and expensive at the same time. And in places where again there is physical barriers, you would find zones where there wasn't coverage at all, so you'd get blind spots. So a lot of the design decisions in the technology had to be updated to take into fact that we're going into these pockets of low data coverage. And there was a lot of interesting moments and ideas that we experimented with to try to get around this. But one of the really exciting things right now on the African continent is that data coverage has increased a lot. In many of the places today, you will not have a problem. You'll have multiple networks that will cover a certain area. And that is really exciting coming back from back then until now. It's great to see the progress.
If you were to kind of sum up your experience of SafeMotos, and kind of one lesson that you wish you'd known, something you wish you'd known at the beginning, what would you say?
It's a really interesting question to sum it up into one aspect. Would say, I think we found out at the beginning we were trying to make decisions and design decisions to be very on point to what we were seeing on the ground, but I don't think we went far enough in terms of really empathizing with the users and understanding the various contexts in which people were using our services. And this is in some of the lessons we came to learn, which I'm happy to discuss. Was even after doing a lot of these designs that were influenced a lot by what we would see, more in the Western market, we came to find out how far off the mark we were in terms of how we were presenting these designs and solutions to where we were. And also was one of the things that assumptions that you make at the very beginning, that we assumed that because safety was such a strong issue that people would automatically want to use the service, that provided them with safer drivers. But later on, came to find out that people valued more convenience because they weren't thinking about safety in the moment. They're just thinking, I need to get somewhere right now. And so there is a lot of, I think there's a lot of lessons to be unpacked from that experience. But I think you cannot go this you can keep going further in terms of how you observe the users and how you design the product to be really respectful of who they are at the moment.
And that's a really interesting point. That the last point you made there, I tend to ask all my guests, how, in your view, can product teams, design teams keep the needs of the users in this case in mind as they're developing and building products?
Yes, absolutely. How would product teams keep their users in mind? I would, one of the most impactful moments of my career at SafeMotos was we were looking at funnels, user funnels on a dashboard and trying to see how people were navigating between screens in our application. And we noticed that we had a lot of people who would sign up, but we had very few people who would perform the next action. That was very puzzling because people kind of went out of their way to create an account. They must want to understand what this is, but why aren't they taking the next step? And by doing a lot of the surveys online, etc., we weren't finding a definitive answer that would tell us why this was happening. So eventually we had an idea. What if we took users at random, brought them to the office and didn't tell them what we were doing, set them up in an office with a remote camera and a list of tasks and a facilitator in the room, and just let us watch them and see what is happening. And I remember being so humbled by that experience because I realized at that moment that we were disrespecting our users because a lot of people would see the design in front of them and they were unable to complete very basic tasks. And when we would have conversations with them afterwards, they would feel embarrassed or they would feel that they weren't able to figure it out. And that is the most terrible thing you can do when you've designed a product that makes somebody feel embarrassed, because they can't figure it out. So I think that if you go out of your way to really try to observe the users, and if you can in context, you will notice that there's a lot of things in their environment that you cannot observe in a lab. And I think that's what the real goal is seeing a number of people come in and being unable to complete the same task just told us, in no uncertain terms that our design or the way we were approaching it was not respecting our user base.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Usability testing like that is absolutely critical, isn't it, as you say? And moving on now to you mentioned something you're working on at the moment. Just tell me a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. So one of the most exciting things from SafeMotos on the driver side was, so we had the smartphones and we would track the drivers that are driving all day and we would get them scores on various metrics. So how hard do you brake? Are you sticking to the speed limits? All those kinds of metrics. We would display them onto their side so they could see specific violations or places they could improve. So we decided at some point that we wanted to experiment something new, which was interventions. So if a driver came in and they had consistently low scores, instead of kicking them out of the system, let's get a driver who has a high score and pair them together so that he can explain how he maintains his scores high. And it was amazing how well that worked because immediately after such interventions, the drivers would just drive more safely. So I've been really excited about this area of data-driven interventions, and my interest has turned into public health. So one of the rising challenges here in Kenya is non-communicable diseases. So these are your diabetes, hypertension, yeah, etc. The WHO classifies them as lifestyle diseases. But what is a lot of good research has been written on specific interventions that you can make to people at the right time that would help them either better manage their condition or avoid if they're at risk. So I have partnered with a doctor, and we're doing this together with the hope of creating a platform that can help people either manage or prevent a non-communicable disease.
So your experience with SafeMotos kind of triggered certain areas of interest, which have led you on to this next piece of work. Is that fair to say?
Yes, no, absolutely. And the experience with SafeMotos was one, realizing how the power of technology in terms of how you can quickly impact a lot of people's lives because it just scales, and also just the power of data-driven behavior change, where if you present the right information to somebody at the right time, you can change their behavior. And whether it's becoming a better driver or improving your health outcomes.
And tell me a little bit about, so as I mentioned at the beginning, you're going to be giving the keynote at the upcoming Kai 23 conference in Hamburg. Tell me a little bit about kind of, if you don't mind, what you're going to be talking about and what lessons you'd like those attending to take away from your keynote.
I'm really excited for Kai coming up. And what I would like to speak about mainly would be to paint some color on just how the context of designing for Africa, and because Africa is where I understand, and there are a lot of challenges here, which are, in my opinion, opportunities waited to be tapped into. However, when you're designing a digital product for this continent, you just have to keep in mind that a lot of design best practices from elsewhere might not transfer here. And you just have to respect the context of how technology is used. And I want to share my experience and the lessons that I've learned in launching such products, and also as an invitation for anyone who wants to come have fun at tackling some serious challenges to come over.
How do you see the future of digital transformation kind of more broadly in the context of Africa?
I think one of the most exciting large scale transformation that is happening on the continent is just how everybody is on a smartphone. Everybody is on a smartphone that is connected, and that is just growing more and more. This is just the most exciting thing because at the beginning, unfortunately, people would get the smartphones to be on social media or just to have it. But now, because of this, in the last few years, there's a lot of really useful solutions to serious problems that are being deployed across this, and the smartphone is becoming a utility, a tool for a lot of services. And there's been a lot of effort, as you mentioned. A lot of governments here as well are trying to move services online, and that is a transformation that is happening. But on the other hand, I think with a combination of just the entrepreneur spirit and problem solving mindset that a lot of Africans have, if you're able to utilize a smartphone to deliver a solution, and you make it fit for purpose, you can reach so many people and you can impact so many people in an instant.
There's just one final thing I'd like to do with you, if I may, and that is the 3-card challenge, which I do with all my guests. So I've got here, Peter, 3 playing cards, and I'm going to put you on the spot here. But on the back of each, I've written either technique, trend, or tool. And what I'd like you to do is just to pick one, and then one at a time, just give me your favorite technique, trend, or tool that you maybe use in your day-to-day work or that you've kind of used in the past. Does that sound okay?
Okay, J of Spades.
Okay, so Jack of Spades. So what I've written on the back is technique. So what's your, maybe thinking back to SafeMotos or the work what you're working on at the moment, what's your favorite technique in terms of maybe user experience, maybe design, maybe thinking about the product, maybe something more broad, but in terms of your day-to-day work?
One of my favorite technique in my day-to-day work is creating very simple but convincing prototypes that I can very quickly share with somebody else, and preferably let them use it and I watch what they do. And that's saved me a lot of hours of bad designs that I could have developed. That is rapid prototyping is my technique to share.
Right. And out of interest, what tools do you use for that?
Yes, it's very exciting times actually, because there is a lot of low code tools that you can use to create those kinds of flows. Currently, I am really excited about a tool called Flutterflow, and sometimes I also use Figma. But I like to design interactive prototypes, especially for apps that I can very quickly spin up and test with people around me.
Two more cards.
The Ace of Hearts.
Ace of Hearts is a tool. So we've talked about rapid prototyping. Maybe another a tool that you use, something that you use in your work that you like or find useful, or is your kind of go-to.
I will say that a tool that I found very interesting to use has been Jupyter Notebooks. And the reason I bring this up is because of being able to get meaning out of data that I'm collecting, especially when I am doing research that involves a large number of people. I find that a lot of the interesting trends I can dig into by writing some code and doing some analysis, and I always find interesting nuggets hiding in there.
And the last one, Queen of
The
Diamonds,
Queen
which
of Diamond.
a trend. So think of a trend you see in your work, or more broadly in terms of digital.
I have been really excited by the recent developments in machine learning, especially around large language models. I think away from the hype of the news, they present real utility in terms of things that you can do. And some of the most exciting things have been these kinds of models trained on medical question and answer, or other kind of domain specific corpuses. And I think that, it's not just about chatting, but it's about the utility that surrounds a technology. And I'm really excited to see what kind of applications come out of this that leverage the fact that we can have models that can model kind of knowledge and language to a very high degree of accuracy.
That's been great. Thank you so much, Peter, for taking the time to talk to me. I'm even more excited now to hear your talk at Kai at the end of the month. But where can people find out more about you?
I've shared a link to my website on the Kai website, and I'm on LinkedIn, so we can connect there.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Understanding Users podcast. I hope you found something of interest that you can take away and use in your own organization. And special thanks to my guest, Peter Kariuki. If you enjoyed what you heard, do please like or comment wherever you're listening, and feel free to share this episode more widely. And feel free, of course, to drop me a line with any feedback via LinkedIn or my website, researchable.uk. Links are in the show notes. You can find out more about our sponsor, Ribbon, and their rapid continuous research platform at ribbonapp.com. Links are also in the show notes. Join me again next time when I'll be talking to another experienced digital professional and asking them to share their wisdom, tips, and knowledge. Until then, stay safe and stay user-centered.